So we're doing an oil change on a 2017 Fiat 124 Spider. This one has the oil filter up top, and you have to drain the oil from the pan from underneath. Typically, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the filter first. That allows the oil that's in the filter housing to drain down. And I'll show you that filter housing when I let it back down. So we've already removed the filter from up there to allow the oil to drain into the pan. And then on the Fiat 124, there is a pan underneath it, a metal splash pan protection shield that you have to remove. And you actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bolts that you have to remove this. Once you do that, then you have access to the drain plug, and then we'll show you that in a moment. Okay, so now that we have our shield removed, you can see the oils drip down on it from up top when we remove the filter. There's the pile of bolts that comes out of it, 9 in total. You can access the drain plug now, which is located right here. And once you remove that drain plug, then you'll be draining the oil. So we have our oil drained now, slowed down to just a drip. Go ahead and put the drain plug back in. The drain plug size on this, by the way, is a 13 millimeter. 13 millimeter socket is what you'll need, or a wrench. Prefer a socket, because most wrenches are going to be 12 point. You're more likely to have a chance of rounding the edges, and over time that'll become a problem. You just make sure it's good and tight. This wrench we have is a 6-point designed specifically for doing drain plugs. Alright, so we got our drain plug in tight. We got our shield cleaned up and the oil that drained down when we removed the filter, so it's ready to go back up there. So we have our 9 bolts back in place. We're ready to tighten them so that we'll be able to let the vehicle down and finish up from the top what we have to do, where we can show you the oil filter and actually add the oil. Okay, we got our bolts tight now. We can let it down and do what we have to from the top. So as you can see, we've already removed the oil filter. The oil filter is going to come out between the air intake hose that goes to the turbocharger and the coolant bottle. Your opening here is where you'll take the filter out. So actually, you'll just have to kind of pull this hose down a little bit as you depress the snorkel hose here. And you'll notice if you look down in the housing, there's no oil standing in it now. We ended up, we always pull the filter first up here and it lets oil drain down into the pan. The other thing you'll need to do is remove this wire that plugs on to the turbocharger. There'll be the little yellowish clip you'll have to pop down, and then once you do that you can squeeze this and then remove it. Just make sure when you're done changing the filter that you plug it back in before you attempt to start the car. Okay, so we've removed our oil filter from the car, and the oil filter itself just snaps into the housing. To remove it, you just grab it, kind of cock it, and it'll pop right out like that. You then have to take your O-ring, take it off the housing, use a screwdriver, gently pry it off of the housing. Take your new O-ring, slip it around, make sure you oil that O-ring. You want it good and lubricated, so that when you turn it into the housing it doesn't bind up and pinch it. Make sure you get it down into the correct groove, which is above the threads and below the cap. Once you get that done, then you take your filter new filter, snap it into the housing. Once it's snapped in, then you're going to go and install it in the vehicle, and we'll reposition the camera so that you can see that. Not sure I can get you right where you need to be with this, but we'll try to get as close as we can anyway. You can see the opening we're going to go through. I already showed you where the filter was, so basically just install it down into here. You'll hold the hose out of your way. Down below, push your intake snorkel over just a bit to get it past it. You get it into the opening, then start it by hand, turn it as far as you can by hand. Then you'll need a 27mm socket with an extension. Go right in through there, turn it slowly. That allows the O-ring to follow the housing and not get in a bind and pinch it. Just turn it nice gentle till you feel the cap snug up, and snug is all you need there. The O-ring does the sealing. Once you've done that, make sure to reconnect the wire connector I showed you by the terminal, or by the turbo, excuse me. And now clean up any oil that may have dripped when you take the filter out. So now our filter is installed back in the housing. Like I said, make sure your cap is snugged up. Once you get that done, make sure to reconnect this wire connector here. As I said, removing that, disconnecting that makes it much easier, disconnecting that wire to get the filter in and out. Anything else that you may have moved, wipe up all your oil you may have dripped. Now you're ready to move on to adding 4 quarts of 5W40 synthetic oil. And once you do that, get your oil in, make sure to start the car and double and triple check for leaks around the filter housing while it's running. If you're good there, you're good to go. Okay, so we started our little Fiat 124 Spider. So we can check the leak, look down at the filter housing. Oops, we zoomed in a little too tight there. Make sure we don't have any leaks. A little water there from where we filled the coolant bottle. But everything looks good. We put in our 4 quarts of liquid moly 15W4 or 5W40, excuse me, and we're all